Hello everyone, we are back with a short review here, this time of Starstruck: Hands of Time. This is a smaller game that I only know about because I was doing research on Y2K way back before that video was released. Because while Starstruck is directed, written, and programmed by Max Ponerov, the game's visuals and audio were primarily designed by Brian and Andrew Allenson. This is not an Axe Studios game, but if you look in the credits you will see a lot of familiar names, especially when it comes to the personnel involved in producing the music. Now, the simplest way to describe Starstruck is that it's a rhythm game a bit like Guitar Hero, but aesthetically, it's much closer to something like Parappa the Rappa or Guitaru Man. I don't know if you remember that. They were these early to mid-2000s music games. Unfortunately, they haven't left as much of a lasting legacy as I would have liked, even though they were pretty fun back in the day. Unlike those older games, the story in Starstruck is a much larger component, and the themes that it explores are much more serious than, noodles ruling the world. Because while Starstruck is about some kids and their relationship with music, it's also about a time-traveling astronaut who uses their giant hand to break stuff in order to save the future. So while you do spend a good amount of time jamming on guitar, there's also a fair amount of adventuring around town where you can find some secrets like bonus music tracks and new guitars. Sometimes you'll need to destroy specific objects in the levels where you're controlling the big hand so that the kids can reach them later. There are some very interesting story sequences in between the more active gameplay, but I do feel like the balance of all of this was a little bit off. I would have liked perhaps a few more songs to help cover certain portions of the game where it kind of felt like it was bordering on walking simulator territory, but we're going to talk more about game pacing later. What I'd really like to commend is the game's art direction. This is a fantastic example of why aesthetics are so much more important than raw processing power when we talk about graphics. The game environments have all been rendered as if they were dioramas made from common materials, and I think that they look lovely. The characters are fully expressive up close and from a distance. Kind of reminds me of what Brian Allenson was doing on Y2K, where they were trying to capture the feeling of towns and NPCs in retro games. And not only has that been brought back for Starstruck, they've gone with a more detailed look so you can really see what everything and everyone was made out of. It's kind of like some of the later Paper Mario games, if you've seen that style, and it ties in quite well with the game's themes of art and creativity. Honestly, I'm not sure how much of this game I want to show you in the footage. There are some shots and sequences that are really well conceived and put together. It's unique and more than a little mind-bending, to be honest. They're doing stuff in this game visually that I'm not sure I've ever seen before, and I want to give them a lot of credit. Speaking of things that are mind-bending, we can talk a little more about the story. When I said that it was more serious, I wasn't just saying that in relation to Parappa 2. There are a lot of complex concepts and questions in Starstruck's narrative regarding not just themes related to music and art, but human history, culture, philosophy. Some of this is not exactly subtle, but there are other elements where the answers are not so clear. Honestly, you're going to need a certain level of literacy on those topics and a willingness to reflect on the game after you've completed it if you want to get the most out of Starstruck. There might have been a little bit of history made here. We might be looking at the first Yick-type game. No, I'm joking. A lot of the themes in this game are more about society, I would say, than Y2K. So these games are very distinct, but there's definitely some postmodern storytelling going on, and they do share that DNA. But unfortunately, there's something that they don't share, which I think is the game's biggest problem, and that's when you compare the length of these two games. Even if you're going to take the time to sniff out all of the optional content that you can find in town, Starstruck is going to take 4 hours total. I really don't think you could go much longer than that. The giant hand levels only make up a small part of the game. There's not actually that many of them, unfortunately. And the rest of the game is split between songs, cutscenes, and walking around. Now, Starstruck is $20 full price, and I can see that being an issue for some. There is replayability to the game, and obviously you can spend as much time as you like trying to get high scores on songs. Not to mention that games like Parappa and Guitar Man, they were basically an hour long, and they were sold for a lot more back in the day. So you could make the case that the cost is actually fair for what this is. I'm just highlighting it mostly because I wish the game was longer. I think it could have benefited from some more scenes in the first act of the game. It would have helped establish the principal cast a bit better, maybe providing a better sense of what their lives are like before everything starts getting totally wild later on. It might have helped with the transition between some moments being a little less jarring, but I can also see how it might have been tricky to set up, and it might have put a pretty big delay on getting to the first giant hand mission. So I don't really know how feasible this was, but it is kind of a criticism that I have. Any way that you look at it, Starstruck is going to be a niche product. I could see fans of rhythm games being happy to spend the full price for a new game in the genre, but I can see other people being a little more thrifty with their money and being reluctant. I've seen the game go on sale once already, so maybe just put it on your wish list if you're unsure about this price. I don't go out of my way to play that many indie games, and on some level that disappoints me. It's partially because I'm not that interested in playing increasingly homogenized Metroidvanias and roguelikes over and over, but Starstruck, that is the kind of indie experience that I want. It's something that feels remarkably unique. It feels like it took significant personal passion to create, and it's something that challenges your way of thinking. You want to engage with it on a mental level, even when you're not playing it anymore. And it's because of that experience that I would absolutely recommend Starstruck to anybody who feels the same, anybody who enjoys rhythm games, and of course, people who enjoy postmodern RPGs are probably going to check this out. So I want to give my kudos to the team that put this together. Well done, and I hope that this game is a successful venture. It's really unfortunate how many indie games are struggling to get recognition every year, despite how many award shows are trying to accommodate them. It always feels like they're all just talking about the same 5 games, and so many others are getting left behind. So hopefully I can help shed a light on this one, because I don't think that I would know about this game if I did not read about it in a Y2K pre-release interview many years ago. Speaking of which, you might have heard that Y2K's 1.5 update is going to be released on December 2nd of this year, which is less than a week away. That's alarmingly close. I'm looking forward to playing it, and I'm sure I'm going to have to play it at least a few times before I start putting together a video on the topic. But I want you to know that that game is going to have my full attention, and I'm confident that I will have something released in much less time than it took to make the first review. So please stay tuned for that. We might have a few little things on the channel. That depends on whether or not I've beaten certain games. Maybe I could do videos on them. You know, we've got holidays coming up soon, so hope you're doing well, and we'll see you later.